Instead, Charles III allowed the money to remain in her estate, where it would be heavily taxed. Nearly half of the inheritance disappeared in taxes and fees before Prince William and Prince Harry ever saw it. Why would he do that? Was it generosity, respect, or something more complicated? And what did Diana intend when she structured her will the way she did? The trust that shaped two princes. After taxes, roughly £13 million remained. But William and Harry did not receive that money immediately. Instead, Diana had placed the estate into a trust. Originally, the terms stated that her sons would gain full access to their inheritance at age 25. That's a striking choice. Why 25? Why not 21, the traditional age of maturity? Why not 30, when judgment might be steadier? What did Diana believe about responsibility, independence, and emotional readiness? But here's where the story takes another turn. Executors of the will, including Diana's mother and sister, later changed the terms. The age was moved from 25 to 30. Until then, William and Harry would receive income generated by the estate, but not the principal itself. A delay. A safeguard. Or perhaps an unintended shift in the future she had imagined. This meant that when the young princes faced global scrutiny, intense grief, and unprecedented public pressure after their mother's death, they did so without direct access to the full financial independence Diana had planned. What impact did that have on their development as adults? Did the delay strengthen them, or shape their choices in ways the world still sees today? More than money, the personal legacy. Diana's will wasn't only about wealth. It also addressed personal possessions, jewelry, letters, dresses, and intimate items that carried emotional significance. Much of her jewelry was designated for her future daughters-in-law. Pause and consider that. Diana was planning for a future she would never see, a future in which the women who married her sons would carry pieces of her story. She ensured that symbols of her life would move forward through the next generation of the monarchy. Years later, that intention would quietly unfold. Her sapphire engagement ring, once chosen by Diana herself, was given by William to Catherine, Princess of Wales. The gesture wasn't just romantic. It connected past and present, grief and continuity, mother and future queen. Similarly, Harry later selected jewelry from Diana's collection for Meghan Markle, incorporating diamonds from Diana's personal pieces into Meghan's engagement ring. What does it mean for a royal institution built on tradition to carry such deeply personal symbols? Was Diana ensuring emotional continuity, or quietly reshaping how the monarchy expresses itself? The question of royal power. Here's where Diana's will become something more than a legal document. Because money in the royal world is never just money. Financial independence can mean emotional independence. And emotional independence can translate into freedom. Freedom to make choices outside institutional expectations. By leaving a significant private fortune directly to her sons, Diana ensured that William and Harry would not be entirely reliant on royal funding or control. They would have their own resources, their own security, their own voice. And that changes power dynamics. A royal who depends entirely on the institution must protect it. A royal with independent wealth may feel freer to question it. Coincidence or design? A mother's strategy or a woman's statement? Diana's life after divorce had revealed a woman redefining herself outside palace structures. She chose her own charities. She controlled her public image. She pursued humanitarian work on her own terms. Her will seems to reflect that same philosophy. She didn't leave her estate to the crown. She didn't return wealth to the institution. She invested in individuals, her sons, and in the future families they would build. This was power redirected from institution to lineage. Was this simply maternal love? Or a philosophical statement about where true influence should lie? The monarchy she left behind. To understand the significance of her final decisions, we must look at the monarchy that followed her death. Public expectations of the royal family changed dramatically after 1997. The demand for emotional openness grew. The insistence on relatability intensified. Silence was no longer acceptable. The royal family had to adapt. Some historians argue that Diana's life and death forced the institution into modernity faster than any internal reform could have achieved. Consider the ripple effects. William and Harry grew up with a model of royal duty shaped by empathy and emotional connection. They prioritized mental health advocacy. They spoke openly about grief. They connected with the public in ways earlier generations rarely had. Are these merely generational shifts, or reflections of Diana's influence, amplified by the independence she provided? The public reaction and the people's princess. When Diana died, millions mourned worldwide. The scale of public grief was unprecedented. Flowers filled the gates of Kensington Palace. Strangers wept openly in the streets. The monarchy initially struggled to respond. That hesitation revealed something profound. Diana's connection with the public had created a new form of royal legitimacy, one rooted not in tradition, but in emotional bond. And her will ensured that this bond would not end with her. By empowering her sons financially and symbolically, she extended her values into the future leadership of the monarchy. Could a legal document really help shape public perception for decades? History suggests it might. The relationship with the crown. There's another dimension often overlooked. Diana had separated herself from royal control before her death. She lost the style Her Royal Highness, yet retained global influence. She operated independently, choosing causes like landmine eradication and AIDS awareness with bold autonomy. Her will reflects that independence. She preserved her personal estate outside the crown's direct control. She created a legacy that could exist parallel to, rather than fully within, the institution. Was this a quiet assertion of identity? A declaration that her influence did not require royal endorsement? Or simply practical planning? The shadow of what might have been. Because Diana never updated her will after her divorce, questions remain. Would she have changed the trust structure? Would she have redirected assets toward charities? Would she have redefined her sons' inheritance as they grew older? We will never know. And that uncertainty adds another layer to the story. Her final legal voice froze at a moment of transition, written during separation, before full independence, before the final chapter of her life. Does that make the will less intentional, or more revealing of her state of mind at the time? The human element behind the headlines. It's easy to view Diana's will as strategy or symbolism. But at its core lies something deeply human. A mother who experienced instability in childhood ensured security for her children. A woman who struggled within rigid systems gave her sons freedom. A public figure who valued empathy preserved personal connections through heirlooms and memory. Her decisions mirror her life story. She had known emotional uncertainty. She gave stability. She had known institutional pressure. She gave independence. She had known silence. She gave voice. Is that coincidence or character? The legacy still unfolding. Nearly 3 decades later, the consequences of Diana's choices continue to echo. William stands as a future king shaped by both tradition and modern values. Harry's path has reflected a different relationship with royal life, one emphasizing personal autonomy and independence. Both trajectories reflect themes present in Diana's life: duty, freedom, emotional authenticity, and individual choice. Could their different paths also reflect the freedom her inheritance provided? And if so, how much of today's monarchy still carries the imprint of decisions made in a document written in 1993? So we return to where we began. Was Diana's will simply a mother providing for her sons? Or was it something more, a quiet redistribution of influence, a reshaping of royal power, a final assertion of independence from an institution that had both defined and constrained her life? Perhaps the answer lies somewhere in between. Because Diana, Princess of Wales, lived in contradictions: vulnerability and strength, tradition and rebellion, spectacle and sincerity. She moved through a world of ceremony with the instincts of a reformer, embracing tradition while subtly reshaping it. Her will reflects that same duality. It was practical and symbolic, personal and political, maternal and transformative. And maybe that's why it continues to fascinate. Because it leaves us with a haunting possibility. What if the most powerful move she ever made was not in front of the cameras? Not in a palace corridor? Not in a carefully choreographed handshake? But in a document that ensured her influence would live on, quietly shaping a monarchy from beyond her lifetime? What do you think? Now here's where things become more layered, more human, more complex, and perhaps more revealing. The letter that revealed her heart. Diana had written a private letter of wishes the day after signing her will. It was not legally binding. It carried no official authority. Yet in many ways, it was the most intimate expression of her intentions. Legal documents often speak the language of precision, assets, percentages, beneficiaries. But this letter spoke the language of emotion. She asked that 75% of her jewelry and personal possessions be divided between her sons, with the hope that their future wives would wear them. It was not merely a financial request. It was a vision of continuity, a way of ensuring her presence at future weddings, celebrations, and family moments she would never live to see. And that wish came true. Her sapphire engagement ring found new life when William proposed to Catherine. A symbol once associated with Diana's own marriage became part of a new royal chapter. Harry, too, honored his mother's legacy by designing Meghan's engagement ring using 2 diamonds from Diana's collection. Through these objects, Diana's memory became woven into the next generation's love stories. Her absence transformed into presence. But her letter contained another request. She asked that 25% of her personal items go to her 17 godchildren, a gesture that reflected her expansive definition of family. Diana had always extended her affection beyond formal boundaries. To her, emotional connection mattered as much as bloodline. That request, however, was never fully carried out. Because the letter lacked legal force, the estate executors, her mother and sister among them, chose not to honor that distribution. Instead, the godchildren received modest keepsakes rather than a share of her possessions. And here we confront a difficult question. If a mother's written wishes are not legally binding, does her intention still carry moral weight? Does the spirit of a request matter as much as its legal authority? Or does the law, by necessity, override the heart, the trust, the delay, and the power of time? Diana's estate also reveals another dimension of her foresight, and the institutional mechanisms that reshaped her intentions after her death. Originally, she intended for William and Harry to receive their full inheritance at age 25. At that age, she believed, they would be mature enough to manage their resources while still young enough to build independent lives. But that didn't happen. Estate executors exercised their legal authority to delay full access until age 30. The brothers could receive income from the trust at 25, but not the principal itself. Why the delay? Was it caution, protection, or an assertion of institutional oversight over personal intention? Time, after all, changes people. It also changes circumstances. By postponing access, the executors ensured the inheritance would shape the princes not as grieving young men, but as adults with clearer identities and responsibilities. When they finally gained full control, each reportedly received around £10 million. A vast sum, but perhaps more significant for what it represented than for its monetary value. It symbolized independence, agency, and the ability to make choices unconstrained by royal financial structures. Even symbolic items followed controlled timelines. Her wedding dress, designed by David and Elizabeth Emanuel, remained in the care of her brother at Althorpe for years before eventually passing to her sons. The dress itself was more than fabric. It was a piece of cultural memory, a relic of a moment watched by millions. And then there was the quiet, deeply personal decision made shortly after her death. Each brother was allowed to select one item from her belongings at Kensington Palace. William chose her Cartier tank watch, a piece associated with time, continuity, and personal connection. Harry chose the sapphire engagement ring. The choice itself tells a story. One brother selecting an emblem of enduring presence, the other choosing a symbol of love and commitment. The brothers made a pact. Whoever married first would use the ring. William married first. Harry handed it over without hesitation. What does that gesture tell us about grief, brotherhood, and shared memory? Was it sacrifice, loyalty, or simply love? A financial legacy that shaped the future. Years later, in a 2021 interview, Harry revealed something profound, something that reshaped public understanding of Diana's estate. When he and Meghan stepped back from royal duties, it was Diana's inheritance that provided the financial foundation for their new life in the United States. Think about that. Diana's wealth funded Harry's departure from the very institution that had once constrained her own life. The implications are striking. Even in death, she created a pathway toward independence. A contingency? An escape route? Was this deliberate foresight? Or simply maternal care that later acquired political significance? Either way, the result is undeniable. Her estate enabled one of the most dramatic shifts in modern royal history. And this raises another question. Can financial planning become a form of long-term influence? Can money carry ideology? Can inheritance become a quiet instrument of change? What they didn't inherit. Many assume William and Harry inherited Althorpe, Diana's childhood home and burial site, a place deeply associated with her memory. They did not. Althorpe belongs to the Spencer family and remains within that lineage. It stands as a separate inheritance, rooted in family tradition rather than royal legacy. What Diana gave her sons was not land, but liquidity. Not estates, but leverage. Not property, but freedom. And that distinction matters profoundly. Land ties individuals to place. Liquidity gives them mobility. Property preserves tradition. Capital enables transformation. What Diana provided was the ability to choose. Today, William's financial position far exceeds Harry's due to his role as heir and the responsibilities that accompany it. Diana's will did not anticipate or attempt to balance that future disparity. Later, additional arrangements quietly ensured Harry's financial security. Yet the foundation of both men's independence traces back to their mother's estate. Without it, their choices, personal and public, might have looked very different. Independence as strategy. So what was Diana's final move? Was it simply maternal protection, ensuring her sons would never want for anything? Or was it something more strategic, a recognition of the pressures they would face within a rigid institution? Diana understood the world she had married into. She had experienced its privileges and its constraints, its protections and its expectations. She knew that financial dependence often meant institutional dependence. By securing her wealth directly for her sons, she ensured they would never rely solely on the crown for support. That independence has shaped every major royal development since. William, preparing for kingship, has carried forward elements of her approach: public empathy, emotional openness, and modern engagement with social issues. Harry, living abroad, has forged a different path, redefining his identity beyond traditional royal roles. Different trajectories. Different philosophies. Yet both emerge from the same source, the security she created. And perhaps that was always the intention. Not to determine their choices, but to ensure they had choices at all. The legacy beyond money. In the end, Diana's estate was never just about millions of pounds. It was about agency. She reshaped expectations around how royals marry, how they parent, how they engage with the public, and how they speak about vulnerability and mental health. She blurred the boundary between royalty and humanity, allowing the world to see not only a princess but a person. Financially, she gave her sons something rare in royal history: autonomy. Not merely an allowance or a trust fund bound by layers of institutional oversight, but genuine freedom, resources paired with discretion. In doing so, she quietly disrupted a centuries-old pattern in which royal heirs were shaped as much by dependency as by privilege. This choice alone reframed their future. What happens when princes are not only protected by tradition, but empowered to act beyond it? For a woman often portrayed as fragile, this outcome reveals remarkable strategic awareness. Princess Diana understood that vulnerability, when paired with foresight, could become strength. She recognized that influence did not always require confrontation. Sometimes it required preparation. Her legacy, therefore, was not merely emotional or symbolic, it was structural. She did not just nurture her children, she altered the conditions under which they would one day operate. She changed systems as well as perceptions. By carefully arranging legal protections, financial independence, and personal guardianship choices, she ensured that her sons would grow up with an uncommon blend of royal responsibility and personal agency. How different might their paths have been without those safeguards? Would their public compassion, their willingness to challenge norms, have survived the weight of unchecked tradition? And perhaps the most fascinating aspect of her legacy is its subtlety. There were no manifestos, no dramatic declarations meant for headlines. She did not announce revolutions or demand applause. Instead, she made decisions, legal, personal, and deliberate, that carried consequences far beyond her lifetime. Each choice was a quiet thread, woven patiently into the fabric of the monarchy's future. Can the absence of spectacle make an act more enduring? Is quiet influence more powerful than visible authority? Is a document signed in private more lasting than a speech delivered in public? These questions linger because her impact resists easy measurement. We are conditioned to recognize power when it is loud, ceremonial, and immediate. Yet her story suggests something more elusive, that true transformation often unfolds behind closed doors, in moments that seem ordinary at the time. How many turning points in history go unnoticed because they arrive without fanfare? The questions that remain. Her will leaves us with enduring questions. Questions not only about Diana, but about power, family, and legacy itself. What defines influence? Public action or private preparation? Does intention outlast life? Can personal love reshape public institutions? And when history changes course, do we always recognize the moment it truly began? Because her story suggests that transformation often happens quietly, in conversations, in letters, in decisions made away from the spotlight. Her legacy reminds us that power does not always announce itself. Sometimes it is written. Sometimes it is planned. Sometimes it is entrusted to the future. So I'll leave you with this. When you look at today's royal family, their emotional openness, their modern parenting, their evolving relationship with tradition, are we witnessing a new monarchy? Or are we still living within Diana's blueprint? Because sometimes the most powerful rebellions are not loud. They are not dramatic. They do not demand attention. They simply endure, shaping the world long after their author is gone.